There is a product in your laundry room that costs money every single week, goes straight to landfill after one use, and leaves a chemical coating on every piece of clothing you own. The company that invented it launched it in 1973. Today, their market is worth $14.3 billion, and the thing that does the same job better with no residue, no chemicals, no waste is already in your kitchen. You might have used it yesterday. It costs less than a cent per load. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, "Yeah, vinegar, I've heard that one," stay with me, because what nobody ever explains is why it works. And once you understand the actual chemistry, you will never look at a dryer sheet the same way again. This is buried formula. Let's open the vault. Before the electric dryer, static cling in laundry was not really a problem. Clothes dried on a line, no heat, no tumbling, no friction. The static problem is almost entirely a side effect of the machine that replaced the clothesline and of the fabrics that came along with it. Electric dryers entered American homes in the 1930s and became standard by the 1950s. Then in the 1960s, polyester arrived, along with nylon and acrylic. Synthetic fabrics took over fashion and home goods almost overnight because they were cheap to produce, easy to wash, and resistant to wrinkling. What nobody advertised was that they were also electric insulators. When synthetic fabrics rub together in a hot dryer drum, charge builds up on the surface of every fiber, and unlike cotton or wool, synthetics have no way to release it. The charge stays, the clothes stick together, you pull a shirt out of the dryer, and it clings to your arm for the rest of the day. Procter & Gamble saw this problem and launched Bounce in 1973. It was a disposable sheet coated with positively charged chemicals that transfer onto fabric during the dryer cycle, neutralizing the negative charge that causes cling. It worked. It smelled like a mountain spring. It sold. 50 years later, Procter & Gamble holds more than 50% of the U.S. fabric softener market, $14.3 billion globally. One problem, one product, 50 years of weekly repurchasing. What Procter & Gamble never mentioned is that the static problem has a root cause that has nothing to do with the dryer, and fixing that root cause costs nothing. But to understand it, you need to understand what detergent actually leaves behind on your clothes and why that invisible residue is the real villain in this story. Modern laundry detergents are strongly alkaline. Most sit between pH 9.5 and 10.8. That alkalinity is what makes them effective. High pH breaks down grease and suspends dirt particles in the water so they rinse away. It works well, but it has a side effect that detergent companies do not highlight on the packaging. After the wash cycle, even a thorough rinse leaves a thin layer of alkaline residue on every fiber in the load. On cotton or wool, this barely matters. Natural fibers conduct electricity reasonably well and the residue dissipates. On synthetic fabrics like polyester and nylon, it creates a problem. That alkaline film turns the surface of every synthetic fiber into an electrical insulator. Charge goes in during the dryer cycle and cannot get out. It builds up, it stays. That is what static cling actually is. Not just friction, but friction combined with a surface that cannot release the charge it accumulates. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for the dryer sheet industry. The cationic surfactants in Bounce, the quaternary ammonium compounds, do neutralize that charge, but they do it by depositing another chemical layer on top of the alkaline residue. Load after load, that coating accumulates on your clothes. Professional athletes and high-performance sportswear brands quietly advise against fabric softener for this reason, because it clogs the microscopic fiber channels designed to wick sweat away from skin. The American Academy of Dermatology links fragrance compounds in dryer sheets to skin reactions in millions of Americans, and the individual fragrance chemicals are classified as trade secrets. The ingredient list on a Bounce box does not tell you what you are actually putting on every item of clothing you own. P&G earns billions annually from a solution that adds a chemical problem while solving the static one. The alternative that removes the root cause entirely without depositing anything has been documented in textile chemistry literature for decades. It just does not have a marketing budget. The average American household spends $60 to $120 per year on dryer sheets and liquid fabric softener. A 200-count box of Bounce costs around $12, 6 cents per sheet, per load, per per landfill contribution. Multiply that across 130 million American households doing multiple loads per week, and you begin to understand why $14.3 billion is a conservative estimate. The alternative costs about 10 cents per load at most, and that is being generous. A $3 bottle of white vinegar handles 30 loads, but here's the number that really matters. The residue left by dryer sheets accumulates over time, meaning the more loads you do with Bounce, the more the coating builds up on your clothes. The alternative leaves nothing. It corrects the chemistry and disappears. 50 years, $14.3 billion, and the fix has been sitting in the condiment aisle the whole time. Why has nobody told you? The answer has less to do with the conspiracy and more to do with something more boring and more damaging: incentives. When a company profits from your problem, it has no reason to solve it, so it does not. The question is, what exactly is in that bottle, and why does it work when the chemistry of static says it should not? Think about what happens to water on a wax car. It beads up and rolls off because the surface has been made hydrophobic. It repels water. Now imagine the opposite, a surface that repels electrical charge instead of water. That is essentially what alkaline detergent residue does to synthetic fabric fibers. It makes the surface so electrically resistant that charge cannot escape. Scientists measure this as surface resistivity. The higher the number, the worse the surface is at releasing charge. Synthetic fabrics rinsed with standard detergent and no treatment have surface resistivity levels so high that charge simply accumulates and stays. Add heat from a dryer and tumbling motion that generates more friction, and you have a perfect static generating system. The charge on each fiber has nowhere to go. It spreads to neighboring garments. It makes your shirt cling to your arm 4 hours after the dryer cycle ended. Now, here is what happens when the alkaline residue is neutralized before the garment goes in the dryer. The surface of each fiber goes from electrically resistant back to electrically normal. Charge that builds up during tumbling can dissipate instead of accumulating. The clothes come out of the dryer the way clothes came out of a clothesline naturally. No coating, no chemical deposit, just fabric. The compound that neutralizes alkaline residue on fabric is a weak acid. It reacts with the alkaline film, converts it to neutral salts that rinse away, and then evaporates completely during the dryer cycle. No smell, no trace. And it is something you have in your kitchen right now: distilled white vinegar. Half a cup in the fabric softener compartment of your washing machine, or added directly to the rinse cycle. That is it. The acetic acid in white vinegar, 5% concentration, the standard grocery store bottle, reacts with the alkaline detergent residue left on synthetic fibers after the wash cycle. It neutralizes that residue and converts it to compounds that rinse away with the water. By the time the garment reaches the dryer, the surface of each fiber is chemically normal. Charge that builds up during tumbling can dissipate. Static cling does not develop. Textile chemistry researchers who have measured this effect document the change in surface electrical behavior directly. The residue that was making the fabric surface behave like an insulator is gone. The fabric behaves the way it was designed to behave. The vinegar itself evaporates completely in the dryer below 100 degrees Celsius, which every dryer cycle exceeds, leaving no odor, no residue, no trace on the fabric. Commercial laundries have used acid rinse cycles for this purpose for decades. The pH correction step is standard practice in industrial textile processing. It just never made it into the consumer marketing conversation for obvious reasons. One limitation worth being clear about: the more alkaline your detergent and the harder your water, the more dramatic the static effect will be. If your water is very soft and your detergent is low alkaline, the static improvement will be less pronounced. For the majority of American households with standard detergent and municipal tap water, the effect is consistent. Do not combine white vinegar with chlorine bleach in the same load. The combination produces chlorine gas. Using them in separate cycles is fine. Using them together is not. Bounce launched in 1973. That is 50 years. It is part of a market worth $14.3 billion. The product masks the problem by adding another chemical layer on top of the one that caused it. White vinegar neutralizes the root cause, half a cup, 10 cents, no residue, no coating, no weekly trip to the landfill. The science has been there the whole time. The incentive to tell you about it has not. Subscribe. We find one of these every single day. This is Buried Formula.